The scorching sun beat down mercilessly as Virginia Harlow wiped sweat from her brow, her eyes fixed on the endless horizon where the Oklahoma Territory stretched like an eternal canvas of dust and promise. It was June 1885, and the 22-year-old schoolteacher from Boston had never imagined that her journey west would become a desperate fight for survival. "Water's running low," Virginia muttered to herself, checking the nearly empty canteen strapped to her weary mare. 3 days since her wagon train had been attacked by bandits. 3 days since she'd fled into the wilderness alone, following what she prayed was the route to Fort Stillwater. Her elegant traveling dress, once a proud symbol of her Eastern refinement, now hung in tatters around her slender frame, the blue fabric stained with dirt and sweat. The dizziness came first, a subtle warning that Virginia stubbornly ignored. Then the pounding headache, followed by the strange darkening at the edges of her vision. The landscape before her began to ripple and waver like a mirage. "Just a little further," she whispered as her gloved hands loosened their grip on the reins. The last thing Virginia remembered was the feeling of falling, the ground rising up to meet her as consciousness slipped away. Nathan Lawson spotted the fallen rider from half a mile away. At 30 years old, he'd spent enough time in these unforgiving plains to know that a motionless figure meant trouble. He spurred his stallion forward, dust billowing behind him as he closed the distance between them. "Whoa there, Thunder!" he called to his horse, pulling up beside the unconscious woman. Nathan dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the hard-packed earth. The sun glinted off his silver-handled Colt revolver as he knelt beside her. "Miss, can you hear me?" His voice was gentle yet carried the rough edges of a man who'd spent years under the open sky. Nathan removed his hat, revealing sun-bleached hair and a face weathered by years of riding the range. When she didn't respond, he pressed 2 fingers against her neck, relieved to find a pulse, though it fluttered weakly beneath his touch. Heat exhaustion, he'd seen it before. Nathan glanced at her mare, which stood nearby, reins trailing in the dust. The animal's sides heaved with exertion, its coat flecked with foam. Both rider and horse were at their limits. "You're a long way from anywhere, madam," he murmured, taking in her fine, if tattered clothes. Nathan uncorked his canteen and gently lifted her head, letting a few drops of water touch her parched lips. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. The decision wasn't difficult. Night would fall in a few hours, and leaving her alone would be a death sentence. With practiced efficiency, Nathan secured her horse's reins to his saddle, then carefully gathered the unconscious woman in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body limp against his chest as he mounted Thunder, settling her across his lap. "Hold on," he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. "I've got you." Nathan knew of a creek about 5 miles west. With the woman's mare in tow, he set off across the plains, his strong arms cradling her securely against the rhythmic motion of the horse. The vast emptiness of the territory stretched around them as the afternoon sun continued its relentless assault. Hours passed as Nathan rode steadily westward. The woman stirred occasionally, but never fully woke. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in fiery oranges and reds, he finally spotted the stand of cottonwoods that marked the creek's location. Relief washed over him as he guided Thunder toward the promise of water and shelter. The creek gurgled softly, a ribbon of life cutting through the parched landscape. Nathan carefully dismounted, still holding the unconscious woman, and laid her in the shade of a large cottonwood. He worked quickly, unsaddling the horses and letting them drink from the clear water before setting up a simple camp. As dust settled over the land, Nathan built a small fire and prepared a broth from the provisions in his saddlebags. The dancing flames cast flickering shadows across the woman's face, highlighting delicate features that seemed out of place in this harsh country. Virginia's first sensation upon waking was the cool touch of a damp cloth against her forehead. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking in confusion at the star-filled sky above her. The last thing she remembered was riding under the punishing sun, miles from anywhere. "Easy now," a deep voice murmured. "You're safe." Virginia turned her head to find herself looking into the most striking blue eyes she'd ever seen, set in a face that spoke of hard miles and harder decisions. "Where am I?" she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happened?" Found you collapsed about 10 miles east of here, the stranger explained, offering a tin cup filled with water. Your horse was near done in, and you weren't much better off. Heat got to you both. Virginia tried to sit up, but fell back as dizziness overtook her. The man's strong hand gently supported her shoulders as he helped her sip the water. Thank you, she said, studying him in the firelight. He wasn't what she would have called handsome in Boston. Drawing rooms, his face was too angular, too marked by sun and wind, but there was something compelling in his steady gaze and the quiet confidence with which he moved. Nathan Lawson, he introduced himself, settling back on his heels. Most folks just call me Nate. Virginia Harlow, she replied, proper manners surfacing even in these strange circumstances. I was traveling with a wagon train to Fort Stillwater when we were attacked. I got separated from the others. Nathan nodded, his expression grave. Heard about that. Happened about 3 days ago? Yes, Virginia confirmed, surprised. How did you know? Word travels, even out here. Nathan stirred the pot hanging over the fire. Army patrol found some survivors. They're searching for others. Hope flared in Virginia's chest. Then we should find them. They could help. Not tonight, Nathan interrupted gently. You need rest, and we're a good day's ride from where they're searching. Come morning, we'll head for Fort Stillwater. He offered her a bowl of the simple broth. For now, you need to eat something. Virginia wanted to argue but lacked the strength. She accepted the bowl with trembling hands, surprised by how ravenous she felt once the rich aroma hit her nostrils. You're not what I expected, Nathan remarked as he watched her eat. Virginia paused, spoon halfway to her lips. What do you mean? A hint of a smile touched his mouth. Not many Eastern ladies could survive 3 days alone in this country. I'm not entirely helpless, Mr. Lawson, she replied, a touch of pride coloring her voice. My father believed in practical education for both his sons and daughters. Smart man, Nathan acknowledged. And it's just Nate. Nobody's called me Mr. Lawson since I left Kentucky. As Virginia finished her meal, she became increasingly aware of her disheveled appearance. Her hair had come loose from its pins, tumbling in tangled waves around her shoulders, and her once fine dress was hardly more than rags. I must look a fright, she murmured, self-consciously tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Nathan's gaze was steady. You look like someone who survived when others might not have. His simple words, delivered without flattery or condescension, touched Virginia in a way that elaborate compliments never had. She lowered her eyes, suddenly conscious of the warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the fire. You should rest, Nathan said, taking the empty bowl from her hands. We've got a long ride tomorrow. Virginia settled back onto the bedroll he'd prepared for her, watching as Nathan moved around the small camp with practiced efficiency. In the firelight, she noticed details she'd missed before, the way he favored his left leg slightly, the old scar that ran along his jawline, the careful way he checked both horses before finally sitting down across the fire from her. Have you been in this territory long? She asked, not yet ready for sleep despite her exhaustion. Nathan poured himself a cup of coffee. Going on 8 years, came out after the war ended. Didn't much feel like going back to Kentucky. The war? Virginia's interest was piqued. You fought for the Union? Started with the Union, Nathan corrected. Ended with nobody in particular. His tone suggested the subject wasn't one he cared to explore further. Virginia respected his reticence. I came west to teach at the new school in Fort Stillwater. There's so much need for education in these territories. Nathan's expression softened. A schoolteacher. That explains the books. Books? Virginia sat up, suddenly alarmed. My trunk, I had books with me. Easy, Nathan soothed. Your mare was still carrying your saddlebags. Not much in them but some clothes, letters, and a couple of books. They're right here. He reached behind him and produced her worn leather saddlebags. Virginia clutched them gratefully. These books are all I have left from my father's library. Thank you for saving them. Didn't do much. Your horse did the carrying, Nathan replied modestly. As the fire burned low, Virginia found herself watching the enigmatic cowboy across from her. He wasn't like the men she'd known in Boston. There was nothing artificial about Nathan Lawson. Every movement, every word seemed to come from a place of authenticity that both intrigued and unsettled her. Why were you out here alone? She asked suddenly. Nathan took his time answering, gazing into the dying embers. I scout for the army sometimes. Was heading back from checking the North Ranges when I spotted you. Then I'm fortunate you found me, Virginia said softly. Get some sleep, Miss Harlow, Nathan replied, his voice gentle. We'll head out at first light. Virginia lay back, pulling the rough blanket up to her chin. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was slow in coming. She was acutely aware of the man sitting across the fire, keeping watch in the vast darkness surrounding their small island of light. For the first time since the attack on the wagon train, Virginia felt safe. Morning came with a pale glow in the eastern sky. Virginia awoke to find Nathan already up, brewing coffee over a freshly built fire. Her body ached from days in the saddle, but the debilitating weakness of yesterday had subsided. How are you feeling? Nathan asked, handing her a steaming cup. Much better, Virginia answered truthfully, though I fear I've imposed on your kindness. No imposition, he assured her. It's not often I have company out here, let alone a schoolteacher from the East. After a simple breakfast of hardtack and jerky, Nathan helped Virginia mount her mare, which seemed recovered after a night of rest and water. She settled into the saddle, grateful to have regained her strength. Fort Stillwater is about 30 miles southwest, Nathan explained as he swung onto Thunder. If we push steady, we can make it by nightfall. Virginia nodded, determined not to slow them down. I'm ready. They rode side by side when the terrain allowed, Nathan setting a pace that was challenging but not punishing. As the morning progressed, Virginia found herself studying her rescuer when he wasn't looking. There was a quiet competence about him that she found strangely compelling, the way he read the landscape, his easy command of his horse, the alert watchfulness that never seemed to waver. You said you scout for the army, Virginia ventured as they paused to water the horses at a small stream. Is that your profession? Nathan shrugged. It's one of the things I do. I hunt, trap, guide settlers sometimes. Whatever pays. A man of many talents, Virginia observed. A faint smile touched his lips. Just a man who likes his freedom, Miss Harlow. Virginia, she corrected him. After all, you've saved my life. I think that earns you the right to use my given name. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that boundaries were shifting, though neither could say exactly how or why. Virginia, Nathan repeated, and she was surprised by how pleasant her name sounded in his deep voice. They continued riding, the conversation flowing more easily between them. Virginia told him about growing up in Boston, her father's position as a professor of literature, and her decision to come west after his death left her with few prospects at home. He sounds like a good man, Nathan commented, teaching his daughter to think for herself. He was, Virginia agreed, a touch of sadness coloring her voice. Though my mother never quite forgave him for making me unmarriageable. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Unmarriageable? Virginia laughed, the sound bright in the open air. That's what she called it. Said no proper gentleman wants a wife who argues about politics and reads Emerson. Their loss, Nathan said simply, and Virginia felt a strange flutter in her chest at the sincerity in his voice. As the day wore on, the terrain gradually changed, with more rolling hills and scattered stands of trees breaking the monotony of the plains. Despite her improved condition, Virginia began to tire as the afternoon sun beat down on them. We should rest, Nathan suggested, noticing her fatigue. There's a good spot up ahead. He led them to a shaded hollow where a spring bubbled up from among the rocks, creating a small oasis of green. Virginia dismounted gratefully, stretching her stiff limbs while Nathan tended to the horses. This country has a harsh beauty to it, she remarked, looking out over the vast landscape. It's nothing like the paintings of the West we see back east. Most painters never set foot out here, Nathan replied, joining her. If they did, they might paint it differently. They shared a simple lunch, sitting side by side on a fallen log. Virginia was acutely aware of Nathan's proximity, of the casual way their shoulders occasionally brushed. It was improper by every standard she'd been raised with, yet out here, those rules seemed as distant as Boston itself. Tell me about Fort Stillwater, she said. What should I expect? Nathan considered her question. It's a growing settlement. The fort itself is decent enough. Army keeps it in good order. The town that's grown up around it is like most frontier towns. Some good folks, some not so good. They're lucky to be getting a teacher like you. You make it sound as though you know me, Virginia teased lightly. Nathan's eyes met hers, unexpectedly serious. I know enough. You're brave, stubborn, and educated. That's rare out here. Virginia felt herself blush under his steady gaze. You've known me barely a day, Mr. Lawson. Nate, he corrected gently. And sometimes a day is enough to take the measure of a person. They resumed their journey after the brief rest, riding slightly closer together than before. Virginia found herself sharing stories from her teaching days in Boston, delighting in Nathan's deep chuckle when she described her more mischievous students. In turn, he told her tales of the territory of thunderstorms that turned the sky green, of sunsets that painted the entire world in gold, of nights so clear you could see every star in creation. It was late afternoon when Nathan suddenly reined in his horse, his posture alert. Virginia pulled up beside him, immediately sensing the change in his demeanor. What is it? She asked, her voice hushed. Riders, Nathan said tersely, nodding toward the ridge ahead. 5, maybe 6 of them. Virginia's heart quickened. Bandits? Can't tell yet. Nathan's hand moved to rest on his revolver. Could be army patrol, could be trouble. They waited in tense silence as the riders appeared on the ridge, silhouetted against the sky. After a moment, Nathan's shoulders relaxed slightly. Army patrol, he confirmed. We're in luck. The soldiers approached cautiously, rifles ready until they recognized Nathan. The sergeant at the lead raised his hand in greeting. Lawson! Didn't expect to see you out this way. Sergeant Miller, Nathan nodded. Found this lady yesterday. She was with the wagon train that got hit. All eyes turned to Virginia, and she straightened in her saddle, conscious of her disheveled appearance. Miss Harlow? The sergeant asked, surprise evident in his voice. The schoolteacher? Madam, we've been searching for survivors. The fort's been worried sick about you. I'm afraid I got separated from the others, Virginia explained. Mr. Lawson found me yesterday when I collapsed from the heat. The sergeant nodded. Lucky he did. We've found most of the others, but it's been a worrying time. He turned to Nathan. We're heading back to the fort. You're welcome to ride with us. Virginia glanced at Nathan, surprised by the sharp disappointment she felt at the thought of their journey ending prematurely. Something must have shown on her face, because Nathan's eyes softened when they met hers. Much obliged, Sergeant, but Miss Harlow and I will make our own way, he said. We've got a good pace going. No need to disrupt your patrol. The sergeant looked between them curiously but didn't argue. As you wish. We'll let them know at the fort that you're both safe and on your way. After exchanging a few more words about the territory's conditions, the patrol rode on, leaving Virginia and Nathan alone once more. A strange silence fell between them as they continued their journey. You didn't have to do that, Virginia said finally. We could have gone with them. Nathan's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. Patrols move slow. We'll make better time on our own. Virginia suspected there was more to his decision, but didn't press. Instead, she found herself grateful for the additional hours in his company, though she couldn't quite explain why. As the afternoon waned, dark clouds began to gather in the western sky. Nathan watched them with growing concern. We need to find shelter, he announced, studying the approaching storm. That's going to hit before we reach the fort. Virginia looked at the threatening clouds. Is there somewhere nearby? There's an old line shack about 3 miles west, Nathan replied, used by cowboys during roundup. Should be empty this time of year. They increased their pace, the horses sensing the changing weather. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and the distant rumble of thunder. Virginia's mare grew skittish, requiring her full concentration to control. By the time they reached the line shack, a simple one-room structure built of rough-hewn logs, the first fat raindrops were beginning to fall. Nathan quickly unsaddled the horses and led them into the small lean-to attached to the cabin, while Virginia hurried inside. The interior was sparse but clean, a small iron stove in one corner, a narrow bunk against the wall, a rough table with a single chair. Virginia stood in the center of the room, suddenly acutely aware that she would be spending the night alone with Nathan in this intimate space. The door opened, and Nathan entered with their saddlebags, shaking water from his hat. Outside, the sky had opened up, rain now falling in sheets as thunder crashed overhead. Made it just in time, he observed, setting down their belongings. If he felt any awkwardness about their situation, he didn't show it. "I'll get a fire going. It gets cold quick when these storms hit." Virginia busied herself arranging what few provisions they had, while Nathan efficiently started a fire in the small stove. Soon the cabin was filled with warmth and the comforting smell of coffee brewing. "It's not much," Nathan apologized, glancing around the humble space, "but it'll keep us dry." "It's perfect," Virginia assured him, genuinely grateful for the shelter. "I'm beginning to think I'm fortunate that you found me, Mr. Lawson, Nate." Their eyes met across the small room, and something shifted in the air between them. Nathan looked away first, moving to check that the roof wasn't leaking as rain pounded overhead. Virginia sat on the edge of the narrow bunk, watching him move about the cabin with easy familiarity. "You've stayed here before?" Nathan nodded. "A few times. Worked cattle in this region some years back." "You've lived many lives, it seems," Virginia observed. A wry smile touched his lips. "Just the one life, madam. Just lived it in a lot of places." As darkness fell outside, they shared a simple meal by the light of a single lantern Nathan had found on a shelf. The close confines of the cabin made conversation inevitable, and Virginia found herself asking questions she might never have dared in more conventional circumstances. "Do you have family waiting somewhere?" she asked as they finished their meal. Nathan was silent for a moment. "Had a brother, lost him at Shiloh. Parents passed before the war." He paused, then added quietly, "There's no one waiting." The simple statement held such solitude that Virginia's heart ached for him. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Nathan shrugged. "It's the way of things out here. Most folks are carrying something." His eyes found hers. "What about you? Anyone besides your mother back east?" Virginia shook her head. "No one who would miss me. Mother remarried last year, a wealthy merchant who disapproves of everything about me. Coming west seemed the best option." "Brave decision," Nathan remarked. "Or foolish," Virginia countered with a self-deprecating smile. "I'm not sure I understood what I was getting into." "Few people do when they come west," Nathan said. "But the ones who stay, they find something they need here." "What did you find?" Virginia asked, genuinely curious. Nathan considered her question, his blue eyes reflecting the lamplight. "Space to breathe, room to be judged by what I do, not where I come from or who my people were." His answer resonated with something deep inside Virginia. Wasn't that exactly what she'd been seeking? A place where her father's unconventional ideas and her own independent mind wouldn't mark her as unsuitable? The storm intensified outside, rain lashing against the small windows as the thunder shook the cabin's walls. Virginia couldn't help but flinch at a particularly loud crash. "Just the sky clearing its throat," Nathan said with a reassuring smile. "Storms pass quick out here." "I'm not used to being so exposed to the elements," Virginia admitted. "In Boston, nature feels more contained." "Out here, we're the ones who are contained," Nathan replied. "Nature does what it wants." As the evening wore on, the awkwardness of their sleeping arrangements became impossible to ignore. There was only the single narrow bunk, barely wide enough for one person. "You take the bunk," Nathan said firmly, spreading his bedroll on the floor near the stove. "I've slept on worse than this floor plenty of times." Virginia wanted to protest, but recognized the futility. Instead, she said, "Thank you for everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't found me." "I'm glad I did," Nathan replied simply. Virginia turned her back as she prepared for bed, loosening her dress just enough for comfort while maintaining modesty. When she turned back, Nathan had doused the lamp, leaving only the red glow from the stove casting shadows around the cabin. She settled onto the bunk, pulling the rough blanket up to her chin. On the floor a few feet away, she could make out Nathan's silhouette as he lay on his bedroll, one arm behind his head. "Nate," she whispered into the darkness. What will you do after you deliver me to Fort Stillwater?" There was a pause before he answered. "Haven't thought that far ahead. Probably head back out. There's always work for a man who knows the territory." Virginia felt an unexpected sadness at the thought of him riding away, disappearing back into the vast landscape. In just one day, this man had become important to her in ways she couldn't fully articulate. "Good night, Virginia." Nathan's deep voice came through the darkness. "Good night, Nate," she replied, closing her eyes as the storm raged outside their snug shelter. Virginia dreamed of endless plains and a man whose face she couldn't quite see, always riding just ahead of her. She woke with a start to find morning light streaming through the small windows. The storm had passed, leaving behind a washed, clean world. Nathan was already up, tending to the stove where coffee brewed. His hair was damp, suggesting he'd already been outside. "Good morning," Virginia said, sitting up and quickly adjusting her disheveled clothing. Nathan turned, a smile warming his usually solemn features. "Morning. Storms past. Should be good riding weather." They shared a breakfast of the last of their provisions, both acutely aware that this would be their final day of travel together. The fort was only a few hours' ride away. "What will Fort Stillwater be like?" Virginia asked as they saddled the horses. Not what they wrote in the advertisement for a teacher." Nathan secured a strap before answering. "It's rough around the edges. The army keeps order well enough, but it's still a frontier town. The school is new, the commander's wife pushed for it. The children are a mix of military families, settlers, and a few from the nearby Cheyenne Reservation who've made peace with the whites." Virginia nodded, absorbing the information. "And the townspeople? Will they accept an Eastern woman as their teacher?" "They'll be grateful for anyone willing to teach their children," Nathan assured her, "though some might find your ideas challenging." "My ideas often have that effect," Virginia said with a small smile. They mounted up and set off into the brilliant morning. The storm had left the air crisp and clean, the colors of the landscape more vivid than before. Virginia found herself trying to memorize everything, the way the sunlight played across the rolling hills, the wildflowers that had appeared as if by magic after the rain, and most of all, the man riding beside her. "There it is," Nathan said a few hours later, pointing to a distant cluster of buildings. "Fort Stillwater." Virginia followed his gaze. The fort stood on a slight rise, its wooden palisades surrounding a collection of buildings. Beyond it, a small town had sprung up, with false-fronted businesses lining a main street. It wasn't much compared to Boston, but to Virginia, it represented a new beginning. As they approached, Virginia became increasingly conscious of her appearance. Her dress was tattered, her hair a tangled mess. It was hardly the impression she'd hoped to make on her arrival. "I must look terrible," she murmured, attempting to smooth her hair. Nathan's gaze was warm when it met hers. "You look like a woman with a story to tell. Out here, that counts for something." Their pace slowed as they neared the fort, both seemingly reluctant to end their journey. Virginia found herself searching for words to express the tumult of emotions. She felt gratitude, certainly, but something deeper too, something that had grown in the space of just 2 days. "Nate," she began hesitantly, "I want to thank you." "No need," he interrupted gently. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Virginia insisted. "Not anyone. You didn't just save my life. You treated me with respect. You listened to me. That's rare." Nathan's eyes held hers for a long moment. "You're an easy woman to respect, Virginia Harlow." Before she could respond, a shout went up from the fort's watchtower. They had been spotted. Minutes later, they were surrounded by soldiers and civilians, all talking at once. Virginia was helped from her horse by the fort's doctor, who immediately began asking questions about her condition. In the commotion, Virginia lost sight of Nathan. When the crowd parted, she saw him still mounted, speaking with the fort commander. Their conversation was brief, and then Nathan tipped his hat to the officer and turned his horse. "Wait," Virginia called out, pushing through the well-meaning crowd. "Nate, you're not leaving?" He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. "You're safe now. That's what matters." "But," Virginia struggled to find the right words. "Will I see you again?" Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty perhaps, or a deeper emotion she couldn't name. "Fort Stillwater isn't exactly on my regular trail." Virginia felt a sharp pang of disappointment. Was this truly to be the end of their acquaintance, after all they'd shared? "Miss Harlow," the fort commander interrupted, "we've prepared quarters for you. The doctor wants to examine you, and there are forms to complete about the wagon train attack." Virginia barely heard him, her eyes still fixed on Nathan. "At least stay the night," she urged. "You must be tired." Nathan glanced at the fort commander, who nodded. "You're welcome to our hospitality, Lawson. It's the least we can offer after your assistance to Miss Harlow." After a moment's hesitation, Nathan dismounted. "One night," he agreed. Relief washed over Virginia. One night meant time to understand the strange connection that had formed between them, time to find the words for what she was feeling. The next few hours passed in a whirl of activity. Virginia was shown to quarters in the officers' section, where a hot bath, her first in days, awaited her. Clean clothes had been provided by the commander's wife, along with sincere welcomes and expressions of concern about her ordeal. "You're lucky that Nathan Lawson found you," Mrs. Greaves, the commander's wife, remarked, as she helped Virginia dress for dinner. "He's a man of few words, but solid reputation." "You know him?" Virginia asked, unable to hide her interest. Mrs. Greaves smiled knowingly. "Everyone knows Nate, though few know him well. He's been scouting for the Army for years. My husband trusts him implicitly, which says a great deal." Dressed in a borrowed blue gown that was slightly too large but wonderfully clean, Virginia made her way to the officers' dining room. Her hair had been arranged simply, still damp from washing, and she wore no jewelry or adornments. Nevertheless, she felt more herself than she had in days. Nathan was already there, standing somewhat awkwardly in a clean shirt and vest that Virginia suspected had also been borrowed. He'd shaved, she noticed, revealing a strong jawline, previously hidden beneath stubble. Their eyes met across the room, and something passed between them, a recognition, an acknowledgement of the unusual circumstances that had brought them together. Dinner was a communal affair, with officers and their wives joining them at a long table. Virginia found herself seated between Mrs. Greaves and a young lieutenant, with Nathan directly across from her. The conversation flowed around her questions about the wagon train attack, discussions of territory politics, and inquiries about her teaching background. Throughout the meal, Virginia was acutely aware of Nathan's presence. He spoke little, answering direct questions with polite brevity, but his eyes often found hers across the table. Each time they did, Virginia felt that strange flutter in her chest return. After dinner, the commander invited everyone onto the wide porch of his quarters for coffee. The evening was mild, with stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Virginia found herself standing at the porch railing, gazing out at the settlement below. "Different view from our camp by the creek," Nathan's voice came from beside her. Virginia turned to find him offering her a cup of coffee. "Very different," she agreed, accepting it with a smile. "Though I find I miss the open sky a bit." "It gets in your blood," Nathan acknowledged. "The space." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their coffee. "What will you do tomorrow?" Virginia finally asked, the question that had been weighing on her mind all evening. Nathan's gaze remained on the horizon. "Thought I might head north. There's talk of new settlements up that way. Might be work guiding folks." Virginia nodded, fighting down disappointment. "Of course. You have your life, your work." "And you have yours," Nathan said softly. "Teaching. It's what you came for." "Yes," Virginia agreed, though suddenly her planned future as Fort Stillwater's schoolteacher seemed somehow diminished. "Though I'm not sure when classes will begin. Mrs. Greaves mentioned the schoolhouse isn't quite finished." "Frontier towns," Nathan said with a slight smile. "Everything takes longer than planned." Their conversation was interrupted by the commander calling Nathan over to discuss something with a group of officers. Virginia watched him go, aware of a growing certainty within her. Whatever was happening between them couldn't end tomorrow. It simply couldn't. The evening wound down early, as was typical of frontier posts. Virginia retired to her quarters, though sleep eluded her. Her mind kept returning to Nathan, to the way he had carried her when she fainted, to their conversations by firelight, to the look in his eyes when he thought she wasn't watching. Morning arrived with a clarity that matched Virginia's resolve. After dressing in another borrowed outfit, a simple skirt and shirtwaist, she went in search of Nathan. She found him at the stables, already preparing Thunder for departure. "You're leaving," she said, stating the obvious. Nathan turned, surprise and something else flickering across his face. "Sun's up. No reason to delay." Virginia took a deep breath. What if there was a reason? Nathan's hand stilled on the saddle. "Virginia." "Please," she interrupted, stepping closer. "Just listen. 2 days ago, I was lost and alone. certain I would die in this strange country. Then you found me, and something changed. Not just my circumstances, but something in me. Nathan's blue eyes were intent on her face. Virginia, you don't owe me anything. This isn't about debt, she insisted. It's about connection. Tell me you didn't feel it too. A muscle worked in Nathan's jaw as he struggled with words. What I feel doesn't matter. You're a lady from Boston, an educated woman. I'm just a man who rides the territory. We come from different worlds. Perhaps that's true, Virginia acknowledged, but we're here now, in this world. And in this world, I've never met anyone like you. Nathan turned away, adjusting Thunder's bridle with unnecessary attention. You don't know me, not really. Then let me, Virginia urged, moving to stand beside him. Stay, just a little longer. The school isn't ready yet, and Mrs. Greaves mentioned they need someone to survey the surrounding area for new families with children. You know this territory better than anyone. Nathan glanced at her, suspicion mingling with hope in his expression. You asking me to work for the school? Virginia smiled. I'm asking you to work with me, to help me understand this place that's to be my home. Is that so unreasonable? For a long moment, Nathan simply looked at her, as if searching for something in her face. Finally, his shoulders relaxed slightly. A week, he conceded. I can give you a week. Virginia's smile widened. A week is a good beginning. 1 week stretched into 2, then into a month. Nathan stayed at Fort Stillwater, initially to help survey the outlying homesteads, then to assist with the completion of the schoolhouse. He proved surprisingly skilled with carpentry, crafting sturdy desks and benches for Virginia's future students. During that time, Virginia began to truly know the man who had saved her life. She learned that he read voraciously when books were available, that he spoke passable Cheyenne from his years in the territory, that he had a talent for sketching landscapes that surprised even him. Most of all, she learned that beneath his reserved exterior was a man of profound integrity and unexpected gentleness. Their relationship evolved with a natural ease that belied its unconventional beginnings. They took long rides together, ostensibly to visit distant homesteads, but really to share the beauty of the open country. Nathan showed Virginia hidden waterfalls, ancient rock formations, and meadows bursting with wildflowers that no eastern garden could rival. In the evenings, they often sat on the schoolhouse porch, reading aloud from Virginia's precious books, or simply talking as the sun set over the plains. It was during one such evening, nearly 6 weeks after her arrival, that Virginia finally asked the question that had been lingering between them. Why have you stayed, Nate? Really? The fading light cast long shadows across his face as he considered her question. You know why, he finally said, his voice low. Virginia's heart quickened. I'd like to hear you say it. Nathan turned to face her, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. Because in all my years of wandering, I've never met anyone like you. Because when I'm with you, I see possibilities I stopped believing in a long time ago. What possibilities? Virginia whispered, hardly daring to breathe. A home, Nathan said simply. Not just a place, but a feeling. A person to come back to. Virginia reached for his hand, her fingers entwining with his. I've felt that too. From the moment you found me. Nathan's other hand came up to gently touch her cheek. I didn't just find you, Virginia. I think, maybe, we found each other. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer both. When they parted, Virginia saw in Nathan's eyes the same wonder she felt. People will talk, he murmured, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. Virginia smiled. Let them. Out here, we're judged by what we do, remember? Not where we come from. The schoolhouse opened in late August, filled with a motley collection of children from the fort and surrounding homesteads. Virginia took to teaching with the same passion she brought to everything, quickly winning over both students and parents with her innovative methods and genuine care. Nathan didn't leave. Instead, he built a small cabin on the outskirts of town, close enough for convenience, but far enough for the privacy they both cherished. He continued scouting for the Army occasionally, but increasingly found work closer to home, guiding new settlers, helping with construction projects, and even assisting Virginia with special lessons on the territory's geography and natural history. Their courtship progressed with a quiet certainty that needed little public declaration. Fort Stillwater, like most frontier communities, was practical about such matters. A man and woman who clearly belonged together were encouraged rather than hindered. It was on a crisp October evening, with the cottonwoods turning gold along the creek, that Nathan took Virginia riding to their favorite spot, a high bluff overlooking the valley where they had first made camp, after he found her collapsed on the trail. "It looks different in autumn," Virginia observed as they spread a blanket on the ground. "More golden." "Everything looks different when you see it in a new season," Nathan replied, settling beside her. "That's one of the things I love about this country. It's never quite the same twice." Virginia leaned against him, content in the warmth of his arm around her shoulders. "Do you ever miss the wandering? The freedom of not being tied to one place?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the vast horizon. "I thought I would," he admitted. "But it turns out freedom isn't just about movement. It's about choice." He turned to look at her, his blue eyes serious. "And I choose this. I choose you." From his pocket, Nathan withdrew a small wooden box, carved with intricate patterns of leaves and stars. "Made this," he said, uncharacteristically nervous. "Took longer than I expected." Virginia opened it with trembling fingers to find a simple gold band nestled inside. "Nate," she breathed. "I'm not a man of fancy words," Nathan said, taking her hand. "But I know that finding you that day was the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you, Virginia Harlow. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred Virginia's vision as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." They were married in November, in the schoolhouse Virginia had come to love, surrounded by students, soldiers, settlers, and even a small delegation from the Cheyenne community that Nathan had befriended over the years. Virginia wore a new dress ordered from Denver, and Nathan wore a proper suit for perhaps the first time in his adult life. As winter settled over Fort Stillwater, they created a home together, a place where Virginia's books shared shelves with Nathan's maps, where Eastern refinement blended with Western practicality, where two people from vastly different backgrounds discovered that their differences enriched rather than divided them. Virginia continued teaching, expanding the school as the settlement grew. Nathan established himself as Fort Stillwater's most reliable guide, bringing his deep knowledge of the territory to the service of the growing community. Together, they became integral to the town's development, respected for both their individual contributions and their partnership. Years passed, marked by the rhythm of seasons and the growth of their family. Their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth after Virginia's mother, arrived the following summer. A son, James, followed 2 years later. Both children inherited their father's love of open spaces and their mother's thirst for knowledge. On the 5th anniversary of the day Nathan had found Virginia collapsed on the trail, they returned to the spot where their journey together had begun. The landscape had changed little, the same endless sky, the same rolling plains, but they had changed profoundly. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been?" Virginia asked as they sat side by side, watching their children play nearby. "If you hadn't been riding this way that day," Nathan took her hand, his thumb brushing over the gold band he'd placed there. "Sometimes, but then I remember something my father used to say, that the important paths in life don't happen by chance." Virginia leaned against his shoulder, contentment washing through her. "I think he was right. Of all the trails in this vast territory, ours were meant to cross." As the sun began its descent, painting the western sky in brilliant gold and crimson, Nathan helped Virginia to her feet. They gathered their children, mounted their horses, and rode toward home, not just a place, but the life they had built together, born from a moment of fate when a cowboy carried a fallen woman through the wilderness as night fell around them. In Fort Stillwater, the story of how Virginia and Nathan Lawson found each other became something of a local legend, a tale told to remind people that even in the harsh realities of frontier life, love could flourish in the most unexpected circumstances. But to Virginia and Nathan, it wasn't legend, it was simply the truth of how their journey began, with a feint on a dusty trail and the steady arms of a cowboy who refused to leave anyone behind. As decades passed and the West slowly transformed from frontier to settled territory, Virginia and Nathan remained constants in the changing landscape of Fort Stillwater. The school grew into an academy under Virginia's guidance, drawing students from throughout the territory. Nathan's knowledge of the land made him invaluable as the region developed, his maps and surveys helping to shape its growth. Their children grew up with the best of both worlds. Virginia's love of literature and learning, balanced by Nathan's practical skills and deep connection to the natural world. Elizabeth eventually took over the academy when Virginia retired, while James combined his father's knowledge of the territory with Eastern education to become an advocate for responsible land management as the open range gradually gave way to farms and ranches. In their later years, Virginia and Nathan would often sit on the porch of the home they'd built together, watching the sunset and reminiscing about that fateful summer day when fate had brought them together on a lonely trail. Their story remained a testament to the truth that sometimes life's most profound journeys begin with a single step, or in their case, with a fall and the strong arms that were there to catch it.